Dear friends, this is George Lees making another video for the first time in quite a long time. Like the last video I made, it's about Germans and people who are joining a massive movement, which is this time not geopolitical, this is religious. Okay? This is the launch of 10 to 12 St. Bonifaces, and the place where the stories were told by the Grimm brothers and the legendary tales that are told by people called Aesop. Yeah, you might have heard of that if you're a fan of my videos on Piso. All of it is the same massive yet pan-historic Christianity scam that leads to the chopping down of people's heads from their shoulders under oak trees for the purpose of getting rid of the pagan worshippers of the sun god, who has had to watch the murder of his supporters right through world history. And now they're stealing the oil wealth that sun god creates for us for free. Yeah, that is the royal families who now own it. And you'll see that this place where the legend started, that's the saint who chopped down Thor's sacred tree, that is Jove's oak, that is Gove in the English Parliament building, in the cabinet still, Donner's oak, and therefore sometimes referred to as Thor's oak. When the pagans are minced up, then you can put them in a kebab. Do you get it? And that is exactly what happened. That is them being torn to bits after they had lost the battle by the knights in armour, who are still the British royals and the ancient black nobility all over Europe, largely out of Switzerland, for profit, who through all of the wars that we've ever had are neutral for the capacity to stash away the take from those people that were murdered in the scam. Yeah, so that's Thor's oak. And let me now show you the thing that absolutely stunned me last week when I discovered it, that Thor's oak is actually in the town where the Pied Piper of Hamelin lived. And there's another one, and like the Monty Python's jokes about the Holy Grail, they've got loads of them. We've already got one. Let me now show you where they are on the maps. Okay, Google Maps. Oh no. Sorry. Map of Israel's borders. Well, maybe on the other tab. Sorry. There's Mannheim. All of that, as you now know, is the naming of Arius Piso, which is the naming of the person that is the writer of Aesop's fables, with the word Piso minced up in his name like the kebab for Islam. All of it is the biggest cause of death in world history. And the launch of the biggest landowners in the world today, that is Pope Francis after Pope Ratzinger. Do you now get the relevance of the name of the German Pope, Ratzinger, for the Pied Piper of Hamelin, which is where St. Boniface is alleged to have been the boss in religion at the cathedral? Rothschild Archive. Scarborough, Mannheim. So there is the Mannheim place that is the naming of Arius Piso. He's the man in world history, which is why the Auf Wiedersehen team went to Mannheim as bricklayers, because the Germans came to make the Roman wall, and that was the governor for the Roman Empire in Wall on Tyneside was called Osip or Peso. It's got the word Piso in it, and that is why the Auf Wiedersehen comedy was made, and that is why the gods have taken the lives of almost all of the actors that were in it. Yeah, and list of notable people from Mannheim. But let's now get the Google Maps of, I hope we've not recently closed it. Oh, there's one. No, Bing. So there's the Pied Piper of Hamelin, okay, dancing through the town, picking up children, and then they become the menace that is the rats, and there, that is the launch of paedophilia, big time, and that, don't be afraid, cat, this guy seems legitimate with all of the tiny children following him. The Pied Piper of Hamelin is a classic fairy tale folk legend, frequently referenced in other works and media, although like most fairy tales, there are various versions. The basic story is as follows. In 1284, while the town of Hamelin was suffering from a rat infestation, a man, sometimes described as looking rather like an elderly woman, dressed in pied, meaning multicoloured or clownish rather than pastries to the face, clothing, appeared, claiming to be a rat catcher. The townsman then promised to pay him for the removal of the rats. The man accepted and played a musical pipe to lure the rats via song into the Weser River, where all of them were drowned. Despite his success, the people reneged on their promise and refused to pay him, or offered to pay him a very measly amount of money, depending on the version. The man left the town angrily, but vowed to return sometime later, seeking revenge. On St. John and Paul's Day, yeah, that is the output of Arius Piso's pen. Those people never lived, like St. Boniface. All of it is the launch of false religion, and the capacity to fool your people by mythology. Yeah? On St. John and Paul's Day, while the inhabitants were in church, the piper returned and played his pipe yet again, this time attracting the children of Hamelin, and at this stage none of them are in uniforms. That is the whole of the story, and that is why the religions have been used to decimate the ordinary poor people of the world and to get their numbers down like the rats. 130 boys and girls followed him out of the town, where they were lured into a cave and never seen again. Depending on the version, at most 3 children remained behind. One was lame and could not follow quickly enough. One was deaf and followed the other children out of curiosity, and the last was blind and unable to see where they were going, who informed the townspeople of what had happened when they came out of the church. The story is often referenced in connection with charismatic leadership, i.e., to compare someone to the Pied Piper is to indicate that they lead unwitting followers to their doom. Isn't it ironic that we do that with our own war dead still? In this town, in that high street, with the kilts on to take the piss out of the surviving men in skirts, for centuries, led by the monarchy, who never are in danger in the wars. The story is often referenced in connection with charismatic leadership, i.e., to compare someone to the Pied Piper is to indicate that they lead unwitting followers to their doom. Yeah, do you get Lord Kitchener now? Yeah, absolutely intent on making his troops fearful of him and sinking the ships that they were in. Yeah, your country needs you dead so that we can be wartime profiteers or the world-owning Pope. Yeah, that is Ratzinger, the first German Pope, directly related to this story. Yeah, and still on the committee of 300, which makes him the richest person on the world because he's faked the God and neglected the real God that will in due course kill him. If they've not already done it, and he's been replaced like Francis with an actor that is in the families that are the Percy Pierce families that have run the Roman world forever and are now in White House. Yeah, that is Jonathan Price and the replacement of the original Pope, Pope Benedict, who did not wear spectacles. He did wear spectacles, and then he was in a wheelchair, and then they had to replace him with the fit-looking Jonathan Pierce. That is the generation before George Bush, and that is the female bloodline, Pierce. Right then, so let's take you now to the religious side of the fake-up. Yeah, the saint who chopped down Thor's sacred tree. And let me show you how many St. Bonifaces we have had to choose from. None of the history ties together, even although the Vatican archives go back almost to the founding fathers of the papacy, which were people called Charlemagne, the killers of the pagans, and the launch of the murderous monarchy, who now reside on Love Islands because none of them can tell the truth. Let's get the list. There is Hamelin and the Monestary, which was built for St. Boniface, who preached there. St. Bonifacius. That's the Pied Piper story, not the papal ones yet. St. Boniface Minster is the oldest church in Hamelin. For more than 1200 years, services have been celebrated here. The huge stones of the minster walls tell of the faith and hope. Sorry, they are not able to let you tell a story without putting naked women on the side of your screen. And they call that a virus. And there is Pope Boniface, Pope Boniface I, Pope Boniface II, Pope Boniface III, Pope Boniface IV, Pope Boniface V, Pope Boniface VI, Anti-Pope Boniface VII, which is a notable Freemasonic signal that this time we're going to be helping get the people who ran the wars out of the war zones. Pope Boniface VIII, Pope Boniface IX, Plymouth, Papal Harbour, and the saint, that's the Plymouth, sailing from England as the Pilgrim Fathers so they can go and brutalise and decimate the pagans in America that are America's native sons that are no longer left with us, because all of them were killed by the cavalry and the cowboys, and the gunpowder does that to all of the people who only have bows and arrows, Lord Jacob Rothschild. Don't know when your turn is going to come on. That's St. Boniface's Minster is the oldest church in Hamelin. Okay, and there's the addresses. Kirchenmusik, Unser Gemeinde. Sorry, I've lost my translator's friendship. Evelyn, Jugend and family. Stiftung. Do you remember that one? For the Kaiser. And the little black sausage dog. Yeah, right into Bavaria and the Forbes rich list again for the man with the massive houses who's now the claimant to the Stuart Catholic throne. The Germans are ever so efficient, and this is in Hesse, I think, and that is where the British Royals have continued with the scam and get coronated by the Archbishop of Canterbury, and then eventually it has to be a Protestant person because they change the rules to get the death toll higher and higher. And they then wear medals at the cenotaph and put the poppy wreaths down cynically, like they do in the high street here. And the corrupted politicians are in attendance and they carry the poppy wreath, especially if the Queen of England has been warned by the gods that they are in a really, really dangerous place for what they've done to the whole of the world out of Hesse, which is there. And it's St. Boniface, and the region is the town of Fulda, and that is in the Lippe. This time it's Lippe something else. It's not Lippe Biesterfield, but it is another estate for those German-Dutch Protestants, and that is the launch of Martin Luther, and the Protestant religions all along the Dutch and Baltic coasts. That's Arianism, the Be-Aryan families that are involved in the fleecing of the world right through world history. That's the black nobility, and the Queen of England is the highest ranking person, which is she's now given the title Pinder for the demonic, devilish leader of the Committee of 300 and the Committee of 1000, the Club of 1001. All of the world's billionaires and massive landowners, that is the massive scam that they own also the World Wildlife Fund, and they've launched a virus disease to make it look as if thousands or millions of animals are going to die with that, and they've now launched a coronavirus that is going to kill the people, and that is now being audited for how much money they need to raise from the ordinary working people so that the World Health Organization can continue to have its three leaders on the Committee of 300, and the billionaires that they are come from those donations. That used to be the Chang family, and she was my Facebook friend, and when I got her to try and make a video like this, the real story that all of those three Changs are sisters and brothers, and that they are billionaires on the Committee of 300. That is why Jacqueline Chang was launched into the social media, and she was a pharmacist like me. She would not make videos with us, and that is the Chang triumvirate that led the World Health Organization at that time. All of it a massive scam, like Obamacare for health, that was busted for cash and pumped and dumped, and all of it is the same story. Right through world history, the poor people have to be dead so that we get to live our lives in luxury, and we need enough poor people to pay the rates, the taxes, and the death duties for them as they die in distant lands. Anyway, let's get back to religion, and then we'll be able to explain how they get to heaven. Right then, there's church service for the World Ecumenical Day of Prayer in the Martin Luther Church. That is B English Church in the Glorious Revolution, and that is the massive schism between Catholic and Protestant, and the proclamation was made that it has to be a Protestant by the crooked government that was founded by the military leader that is Oliver Cromwell. Yeah? And that is the continuation right into the noughties, that the only way you can be a monarch in Britain is to be a Protestant. Yeah? Meanwhile, the popes are the richest people on this earth, and they are always, right through world history, the owners of most land, even compared to the kings. And the people that are still the rich list are the leaders in Cornwall and all along the south coast, and Kevin Cahill, who we used to think was a political activist like me and my friends, but he is the man who organises the world's richest people so that they can get massive returns on their investment of their massive savings. That's Kevin Cahill that runs all of that for the Dukes and Duchesses of Cornwall, of Somerset, and all of those places that never get mentioned, and those are the places that my wife in MI6 used to take me and my children to. That is the massive parks in the south of England that have all sorts of rare species in their ponds and in their cages. Even whales were there, and the family that run that place is on the Forbes rich list. But because Kevin Cahill's team are so good at keeping the statistics quiet, all of it is done in the back room. George I to IV, prefer Episcopalian, all the sad bastards have Catholic outlets in their basement. That is Greg Hallett's book and the snippets from it that has led to the murder of Greg Hallett, his replacement by a mental health case, and the declaration by Miss Lawrence de Mello that she will continue to murder them and will continue to sell the books until I get shut the fuck up. Okay, so there's the church, the chamber choir, Voices Novae, joint service, and Martin Luther. So this is the church in that Hamelin place, and there's the picture again. Right then. So church service with the Hamelner Kantorei, that's Pastor Lesinski, Deacon Overdick, Pastor Rumberg. This is the clerical staff in the story. And that is the cleric that is St. Boniface in the ancient days, that did not come from Germany. He came from Devon in England, so that they could launch a concept called heaven that is like poetry. Yeah, and there's the launch of the German form of Knox, lecturer Noak. Taze Russell. Yeah, all of it that is the launch and the leadership team of the global Jehovah's Witness mafia. Yeah, that is my friends in Kelso in inverted commas that are billionaires. That is Ducker. His other name before he retired from the pharmaceutical industry was Trevor Jones. And now they've got a Trevor Jones pretending to be the gate man at the Poison Garden in Alnwick, working for Percy, who's now on the wrong side, as the Catholic creators. Yeah, and that's Taze Russell, and the founder of the biggest geopolitical organisation on this earth, which calls itself a religion. And Trevor Jones, the lookalike for him, that calls himself Trevor Jones, since I made the videos on the billionaire Trevor Jones from Pharma, he actually drinks in this pub. Right then. So, if you're interested, go and see St. Nicholas. Okay, the services of our sister church, Mark Kirche, and it's named after the Bible author, like St. Nicholas, the devil, and like Nicola Sturgeon, and like my friend's description of the nickel mining industry. Yeah, and all of it is the Bible author's nicknames, like Fania, yeah, like Panther, and that is the Panzer Regiment in the fucking wars that they launch. Right then, let me show you what Germany looks like, even in peacetime. Look, it's depicted in the town's coat of arms to show you that it's historic. For more than 1200 years, services have been celebrated here. The huge stones of the minster walls tell of the faith and hope of the people who have built and maintained this church. In the following, most links open pages in German only. We welcome visitors. The minster is open daily from 9 to 18 hours summertime and 10 to 17 hours from November till March. Exceptions are special events under preparation. The minster is situated right on the bicycle path along the river Weser. Do you get that one now? Have you seen my video on the little man that is the Creature from Outer Space. That is the Bungie video, and that is Bungie the God in Australia for Rupert Murdoch, and that is Rupert Murdoch's sun god replacement. Yeah? And that is the making of the movie that was the little boy that was a creature from outer space. I forget the name of it, but it's a creature from outer space in the title. And that is not aliens this time. It's the little god on the bicycle trying to get home, like the Lily Allen videos that I've shown you in recent days, although they are not yet published. That will bring down many of the politicians that have claimed to be elected in recent months. Yeah, and that's them now declaring that they do not want to be an elected official. They want to be the Mayor of London, to obfuscate the fact that Boris did that before he became the Prime Minister, which was their aspiration in the elections. Our church is a station on the pilgrim's route from Locum. Yeah, all of it is the diasporas away from their hometowns when the locusts come in as the plague. You get it? The rats and the parasites are actually the clerics or the politicians. Right then, so Hamelin, home to St Boniface. The Church Council of the Minster Parish, St Boniface. The coat of arms is the sun god and the fanny in the middle, with the G-spot rosy red. Yeah, and that is the penis is the fish in the Bible. Yeah, 5 loaves and 2 fishes. The first church council of the Minster Parish, St Boniface. Luckily, that is not a real vagina, because that would get my website closed down, because they are now aware that every person that watches my videos gets to understand that all of the religious icons are sexual icons. That's why the American pie is the vagina. It looks like that angelic sun god that I still worship, yeah, and that is the American pie joke, yeah, and that is the author sings about I've forgotten that there are so many now pop videos that feature the same story, and that is the shape of the cathedral's clock towers, yeah, and the bells are still ringing every morning to celebrate the God that never existed. Yeah, that is the sun god's replacement, that is Jesus. And there's jars, yeah, Jarlossung, Jerusalem. Yeah, all of it is the naming of Jehovah's Witnesses. And the gods have failed to pick my mate Trevor Jones up for any form of fooling the people and replacing them with Jehovah, because he was still preaching in front of the town hall in Kelso yesterday morning. Yeah, that's Ducker now. He's changed his name, like the person at the Poison Garden in Alnwick has, who's changed his name to Trevor Jones. Right then, so let's get down and see what else we've got on the listing. Remember, there are 2 stories to tell here. the one about St. Boniface and Thor's Oak, and the launch of Christianity Global, Inc. Right then, Hamelin, let's find out about the hometown for the rat singers. There it is, panorama of Hamelin, and that is the Alps at the back, I think. Absolutely beautiful place. And all of those beautiful places, that is location of Hamelin within the Hamelin Piedmont district. That is the mountains that are the Alps that are Swiss for neutral money laundering reasons and to get the Red Cross into your region in the war zone to get the people dead as quickly as they can, and to get the war loot into the back of the first aid taxi. Red Cross from Switzerland, so that nothing can be detected because they're bound to a code of silence. Location of Hamelin within the Hamelin Piedmont district. We'll get that on Google Maps. I think it's easier because Google always do this. When you take your there's the red spot that shows you where Hamelin is. It's never on the map. When you go to Google and Wikipedia, that's why Wikipedia are given the contract to tell the people how things work. Yeah, so there is Hamelin. It's not on the map because when you convert it to an archive, it gets taken from the map, so that you have to then go to Google Maps and look for it again. Let's do that now. Hamelin, Germany. So there it is, on the map, next to Hanover, where the King and Queen of England were launched from. That is blind Prince George of Cumbria and Teviotdale that came from Hanover to marry in secret Queen Victoria, and there is where Queen Victoria's husband came from Hesse, Cassel. We'll find that in a minute if you cannot immediately see it. Okay, so there is Hamelin, right next to Hanover, where the British monarchs stole the British throne as Nazis. And it's the same story for George W. Bush. They came out of, I forget what the city was, but they're from the Palatinate in Germany, which we're looking at. There is Göttingen, means no God. Yeah? And there is Detmold, and there is Bielefeld, which is the equivalent of Biesterfeld, but that's much further up on the Baltic coast, where the Nazis were actually Dutch before the war. They were German before the war, but they changed in mid-war to Dutch, and that is Bernhard the Nazi, so that he could be a neutral person when they carved up in the war reparations the launch of a bigger estate to him than the one he had in Germany as a Nazi. And there is Hamelin. Yeah, and there is Hanover. Yeah, the whole of British regal history in one little observation. So, Prince Albert is from Hesse, and that is Prince Albert who had a chain through his penis so he could not have sexual congress with Queen Victoria. Yeah, and that is Queen Victoria, who is the grandmother of the Kaiser who we went to war with in World War I, and then with the Rothschild baby that is Hitler in World War II. Yeah, with the Queen of England, Hitler's cousin at that time. Okay, there's Bielefeld, and that is the Biel that scored the goal in the European Cup final a couple of years ago, and the goalie who let in the goals was from Schwabia. There is Lippstadt for the Lipp, what did we say before? The Lipp Detmold. Yeah, so that's Lipp Detmold is another one of those families that have the Lipp lineages, like Bernhard the Nazi. And there's Göttingen, which with the other place that was immune from bombing in Germany is Göttingen and Heidelberg. Yeah, and I believe that all of those places are homes for the occultist fairy tales that the Grimm brothers used to turn into the history of their country. Yeah, no God. And they have learned now that there is a God and that they are watching them ever so closely, which is why the Queenie will not lay the wreaths anymore. And there is Geismar, which is the other option for the location of one of St. Boniface's cathedrals. There is Hesse Cassel, right next to Geismar, which had another Boniface-led cathedral in it. And let's now show you how far apart the popes are and how long-lived the Christianity fake-up is that allows them to get taxes for land use and ownership of their massive mansions right through all of those wars. And it's beginning to snow and sleet again. Sorry. Right then. So there's Warburg. He's the little memory for you all. Let's add him. That's Warburg, that was the founder of the Federal Reserve Bank. All of it comes out of the same place as the religious scams are launched from. Warburg Institution, Woburn Square. They clearly do not want us to find Warburg that is there. Okay, and it's lit up, instead of Warburg that I pointed to, it's lit up McDonald's next to Diemelstadt. That's the Warburgs that founded with Mandel House. That's the Mandelson scam for Miss Hannah Rothschild. Yeah, that's Mandelson, agent for Rothschild, and all of it is their home country, remember? That is the Five Arrows, originally from Frankfurt city centre, and they pretended that it was a poor ghetto, as they brought in millions of gulden from Hanover, like the kings and the princes. And during their lives, those chosen ones that are only needed for bearing babies and siring them, they get blinded by the gods in due course. Because it's the biggest scam in world history, and they're complicit in it. Right then, so let's go back to the map that has got the religious places in them. Oh no. The gods are helping me with this. There in London is, right in the middle of London, the Warburg Institute. I did not search for that. The gods are on my side. And I did not train with Jimmy Hill or any of the people that are on the magic programs on a Saturday evening, like Ant and Dec, that are from that region of Normandy. That's Archbishop Anton Dec in Normandy. And there are the battle zones for the beaches and all the Tom Hanks movies about all of the poor people stepping off the troop carriers and getting their heads blown off their shoulders. And the British Royals go to celebrate that every 60 or 70 years, because that adds up to 13 for their Masonic conquering of the whole world. Right then. And there's the bombing zones in Germany. And remember that Göttingen and Heidelberg are immune, like Cambridge and Oxford. There's the Warburg Institute in the middle, and the stealing of the Bank of England by the family from the European Central Bank is in Frankfurt, and that is the home for Rothschild in their ghetto, in inverted commas. Right then, and there is Wilhelmshaven up there on the Baltic coast, where the ships were able to congregate, because they pretended that there was an Austrian navy, and that went to Bremerhaven, and they had to sail from there so that they could sink ships and launch the war initially. And there is Oldenburg and all of the actors' names that win the Oscars. Hamburg is up there too. Right then, and there is Bremerhaven for the Austrian Navy, which is landlocked in the Alps. That's Captain von Trapp, if you're dim-witted, in the royal family, that do not have to worry about their religion, like their ancestors did, in inverted commas, because their ancestors now are Rothschilds, not the Catholic and Protestant families that were relentlessly executed because they are not on the take, as much as the bankers from Germania and from all over that Baltic coast. That is the Lubavitcher families that eventually penetrated the White House and helped George Bush fleece the entire world, including the Holy Lands, which was all reported by Greg Hallett before the team murdered him. Sorry, let's go back to classic times when you were able to convince people that there was actually a man called Jesus who lived and actually met Charlton Heston when he was in bondage. Okay, Jove's oak, that is the, here we go, Donner's oak, and therefore sometimes referred to as Thor's oak, was a sacred tree of the Germanic pagans located in the region of Hesse, like Adolf Hitler's Rudolf Hess, and all of those are the people that tried to flee to Britain, and Hamilton, in fact, which I used to be very fond of. That is the region of Hesse that my family own. That is my Auntie Anne married into the bus-owning family that is. So there's Boniface chopping down Thor's oak. in his clerical uniform, and that is the oak tree that they execute the pagans under, or under a pile of ashes. They either behead them or the angels wing them. That is, they kill them, or no, they keep them alive so they die a slow death. They break their bones on the back, take the lungs out the back, lay them on the bones, and that is the angel's wings, that every pagan was killed using that absolutely ruthless method. And that is why the angel's wing is in my favourite movie. I did not realise it at the time when it was my favourite movie. That is, every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings. That is, every Christian that replaces a pagan by genocide is able to celebrate the day that the sun god used to be worshipped. That is the 25th of December every year. And there are the civilized Christians. Right then. So, there's Hamelin Piermount again, right on the steps of the Alps. And there's a bigger map, Bad Münder, Heischicks Oldendorf, Hamelin, Koppenbrug, Salzhemmendorf, Emmerthal, Arsen. Oh, have not noticed that one before, Harry Enfield. You don't want to do that. And Bad Pyrmont. And there is Nordrhein Westfalen and Landkreis Holzminden. That is one of the battle zones and one of the massacre zones. And I think it was also the naming of one of the Pacific islands that was one of the biggest massacres in World War II. Okay, so the cities are Bad Münder, Bad Pyrmont, Hamelin. Do you get the pipers now? And everything that we do to celebrate the death of the ordinary people under the place where Charles I was beheaded at Whitehall, because he was a Catholic. Right then. So there's no pictures there. Let's keep going. There's no pictures in the Bible either. It's amazing how that has been so successful. And you don't need to have pictures of their pledges to give you 32,000 virgins if you comply with the rules with the prisoners. Right then. So, Google Maps, cathedrals. And this time we've gotten closer to the church so we can see people in the clerical gowns. Lutheran St. Boniface, cast in stone. Right then, and this is the town of Fulda, which I thought that Boniface lived in, and this is the place where Air Force One touched down so that the president aeroplane can get refueled. But Gary Oldman, the terrorist in the movie, makes them take off again before they land properly. Okay? And that is the hometown for St. Boniface and the creation of a man that possibly never lived. Because when you look at the dates that are claimed by them in that place, and you look at the dates for Wikipedia, none of them coincide with the person that was the first pope from Germany. And when Ratzinger was appointed, they proclaimed that he was the first ever pope from Germany. So, this is Google Maps. So let's look at Fulda now. There we are. So this is the Carolingian movement that are the serial killers led by Charles Martel, the support of the mayors of the palace, and later of the early Pippinids. Yeah, do you get it? Everything is Piso and everything can be faked up by Oxford University, because the author of the Lord of the Rings movie that launched Pippin as one of his characters is able to write all of it into the story about the tiny little people that used to be the Carolingian rulers of Europe. Yeah? The support of the mayor's palace and later of the early Pippinid and Carolingian rulers was important to Boniface's success. Fulda also received support from many of the leading families of the Carolingian world. Sturm, whose tenure as abbot lasted from 747 until 779, was most likely related to the Algilulfing Dukes of Bavaria. That is Algilulf, and that is Algiclough, that still works for Lord Percy in the Poison Garden Syndicate with Trevor Jones, the gardener now, to cover the billionaire that was my boss at Welcome, Trevor Jones. And he's still in the Jehovah's looking for religious funding outside Kelso Town Hall yesterday morning. Yeah, claimant to the fucking English throne, which is why he's changed his name since I told all of those stories. Fulda also received large and constant donations from the Etty Conids, a leading family in Alsace, which is where Donald Trump, Jim Fetzer, the families that are the rich listers that are Heinz, yeah, and the German chancellors came from. That's Alsace in Switzerland, and the making of The Sound of Music comedy or musical to make you all think that it's a lovely, innocent place. Yet they celebrate the war dead with a cabbage. Yeah, that is how the war victims come back home. And for the Swiss Templars, that is why they were sent there in the first place. So they celebrate a cabbage. Yeah, when September ends. That is Algilulf, and that is Algiclough, that is the administrator for the Duke of Northumberland, that is Perseus the poet since ancient Rome. Like the Bush family, who named their mansion in Maine after the Pilgrims landed there, they named their mansion Vesuvius. Because there's no volcano there, unlike Italy, under which the volcano that was Vesuvius, the Piso family wrote the Bible. Do you get the influence of those families that are the writers of the Bible still? Let's go down and tell the whole of the story as it's written, yeah? And let's speculate about doner and the doner kebab. Yeah, roasted in front of a flame. Right then. The oak tree that once stood at the town of Geismar in central Germany was sacred to the pagan. There's another cathedral for Boniface. In central Germany was sacred to the pagan god Thor. We know this because the somewhat fanciful account of its destruction was gleefully preserved by the Christian chroniclers of the cultural genocide of Europe's indigenous culture. The criminal responsible was St. Boniface, an Anglo-Saxon churchman from England. It's the same story as I learned, but the dates are all over the fucking place. That is St. Boniface, an Anglo-Saxon churchman who spread the new totalitarian doctrine of Christianity throughout Germany. As so often was the case, the Christians then occupied the unique sacred site by building one of their standard issue church buildings. Wood from the oak was then reportedly used to build the church at the site dedicated to St. Peter. The naming of Arius Piso is the whole of his the Jesus's disciples at the Last Supper. All of them are nicknames for Piso and his alter ego publications. One of his followers, also an Anglo-Saxon called Willibald, wrote about this event in the life of St. Boniface, and that is the Baldwins of Jerusalem, fleecing the entire Holy Lands so that they can kidnap kings and queens. And that actually happened with the Rothschild family in World War II. If you look up Rothschild family, you look up Louis Rothschild really quickly, because they will take it down now globally. He's a massive scam during World War II, all of it by the Nazis that are actually the Rothschild babies that are Alois Rothschild Hitler. Paying fees to get their kidnapped people back from the war zone. That is the war that they created with their cousins in Germany or with their granny on the throne in England. One of his followers, also an Anglo-Saxon called Willibald, wrote about this event in the life of St. Boniface sometime between 754 and 768. Now, many of the Hessians who at that time had acknowledged the Catholic faith were confirmed by the grace of the Holy Spirit and received the laying on of hands for miracle cures to their diseases. Moreover, some continued secretly, others openly to offer sacrifices to trees and springs, to inspect the entrails of victims. Some practiced divination, legerdemain, and incantations. Some turned their attention to auguries, auspices, and other sacrificial rites. I hope that means more to you than it does to me. Auspices and other sacrificial rites. That's cutting the ribs open on the back of a conscious person so he suffocates to death with his lungs out in the open air. No anesthetic, no alcohol, all of it is to show that we are barbarians murdering in the name of Jesus, who never lived and got murdered in a similar way in a non-existent incident on Calvary Hill, which is the naming of the US cavalry and the killing of the US pagans. Now many of the Hessians who at that time had acknowledged the Catholic faith were confirmed by the grace of the Holy Spirit and received the laying on of hands. But others, not yet strong in the Spirit, refused to accept the pure teachings of the Church in their entirety. Moreover, some continued secretly, others openly, to offer sacrifices to trees. We have done this. Legerdemain, incantations, auguries, auspices, and other sacrificial rites, whilst the others of a more reasonable character forsook all of the profane practices of heathenism and committed none of these crimes. With the counsel and advice of the latter persons, Boniface, in their presence, attempted to cut down, at a place called Gaesmere, a certain oak of extraordinary size, called by the pagans of olden times the Oak of Donner. Taking his courage in his hands, for a great crowd of pagans stood by watching and bitterly cursing in their hearts the enemy of the gods. He cut the first notch into the tree. Not into the ribs, so that their lungs can be taken from inside that already surgically attended corpse. It was not a corpse, remember, it's a slow death by design. Every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings. But when he had made a superficial cut, suddenly the oak's vast bulk, shaken by a mighty blast of wind from above, guess who, crashed to the ground, shivering its topmost branches into fragments in its fall, as if by the express will of God, for the brethren present had done nothing to cause it. The oak burst asunder into 4 parts, each part having a trunk of equal length. At the sight of this extraordinary spectacle, the heathens who had been cursing ceased to revile and began, on the contrary, to believe and bless the God, in case they got the angel's wings. Do you see how amazingly powerful the concept that you will die without any consent unless you worship this new God that we have faked up in our Bible? Thereupon the holy bishop took counsel with the brethren, built an oratory from the timber of the oak, and dedicated it to St. Peter, who never lived, the apostle, from the life of St. Boniface, and God knows if he ever lived either. Remember, this is way back over 1200 years ago, and that is St. Boniface from Devon, where the Pilgrim Fathers sailed from, and the glorious revolution led to the sinking of the English ships by the ones from the Spanish provinces, the Dutch provinces. The above account is the typical sugar-coated myth of a psychopath running around with an axe, only to be later canonized into sainthood. But his karma, with the blessings of Thor, remember that Thor is the god that got laughed at because he lost his hammer to the Christians and had to then dress up as a woman and try and pretend that was the marriage of they were pretending that Thor's sister was getting married, and that she was able to dress up in white as a virgin and then get her hammer back, his hammer back, by that pretense. And that is the massive stories that are now leading to the closing of my videos on why we had the lightning storms when my divorce case was happening. Now YouTube are taking them down, because this is the joke that at Culloden, that's the culling of the god Odin by the humans, like the storytelling by the Grimm brothers, about the massacre of all of their ancient religious ancestors that were sun worshippers. The day of celebration in the winter solstice was the 25th of December, which is why it's now quite embarrassing for the Pope to be known to be the richest man in the world and the biggest landowner in that world. And in the Argentinian Pope Francis story, they are actually the people that killed the ordinary working people in the stadia under George W. Bush's Christian orders. The above account is the typical sugar-coated myth of a psychopath running around with an axe. Let's see if we can get any more further down. He had lifted a Bible towards his attackers, but it had no effect when he was killed by a thrust or sword. That's his karma, running around with the axe. In 754 to 5 AD, when he landed in Friesland, Holland, with a large group of over 37 missionaries savagely set upon by the Frisian pagans, where he and most of his companions were martyred. He had lifted a Bible towards his attackers, but it had no effect when he was killed by a thrust of the sword or an axe. That's why he's often represented by a pierced Bible. It's a pity and supreme irony that the pagans he converted at Geismar, after chopping down their sacred Thor tree as a show of his God's power over the gods, did not get a chance to witness a similar incident where his God failed to protect him and his holy book in that fatal chop that snuffed out his career, destroying Europe's soul and heritage, or otherwise they would have returned back to their old gods and beliefs. There is no information on the torture methods in this story. It's been ironed out. Veneration of sacred groves and secret trees is found throughout the history of the Germanic peoples, and were targeted for destruction by Christian missionaries during the Christianization of the Germanic peoples. Ken Dowden notes that behind this great oak, dedicated to Donar, the Irminsul also felled by Christian missionaries in the 8th century, and the secret tree at Uppsala, where I used to work as a drug safety expert with the Swedish families that are actually in a building that was owned by the Swedish monarchs. Described by Adam of Bremen in the 11th century, that's drug safety Dr. Ian Fingland, who tried to execute me by lobotomy or intramuscular drug injections every 2 months, because I've got the capacity to tell the world the truth about him and his murderous colleagues that are defending the Rothschild family from stealing the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, that we've already mentioned, celebrate the death of the war dead as cabbages. Stands a mythic prototype of an immense world tree described in the Norse religion as Iag Drasil. That's the dragon that is the baby Jesus. Never lived, biggest cause of death in world history. Right then.